Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Now we're always glad you're here. We're always glad to have you here. And today especially because we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic that has revealed some very interesting aspects of the self-publishing world. Today we're talking with Orna Ross, who's with the Alliance of Independent Authors. Welcome to the show, Orna.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks so much for having me. Hello,
I, sh-
everyone.
I should say welcome back. You've been on the show a couple of times now.
Yeah.
This time we're going to be able to see you. Last time, I don't know if you remember, everything started getting really dark.
Oh, yeah. It was evening here in the UK, and I was fading out
That's right.
gradually.
That's right. But we get to see your beautiful face.
Oh, I've
So
forgotten about that.
it's still every now and then YouTube recommends some of these videos to me, and that one pops up pretty frequently. And it's like me and then like two pairs of eyes.
Oh,
So
well, being mysterious and interesting.
that's right. You're living to a brand. So we're going to be talking a lot about the recent report. Oh, well, actually, when did the report come out? The
So
author
it was
income report.
launched at the London Book Fair, which
Okay.
was mid-April. So it's
Okay.
it's it's relatively recent, but as we'll be talking about, it's kind of the first stage in
Yeah.
a bit of a process which you guys are involved in, and
Yeah. Yeah. We're happy to be a part of that because this is something that is proven to be very useful. It's very useful for us, frankly, at Drafted Digital, but in general, it's actually very useful to the entire industry of authors. Can you talk a little bit first about like some of the history of the report before we get into the details?
yeah, definitely. So the history really is that we have been watching author income surveys come out for the just over a decade that ALLi has been in existence. So for those who don't know, the Alliance of Independent Authors is the global self-publishing association. So we represent and advocate for independent authors as well as doing education and lots of other kinds of things. So we have always been watching these author income surveys come out there in the US, the Authors Guild survey here in the UK, the ALCS survey in Australia, the Society of Australian Authors in Canada, so on, all around. Everybody has been talking about the fact that author income is falling. And we've always been looking at that and saying that just isn't right. And when we look closely at the surveys and you see who is being spoken to, you see that the vast majority of the authors that these surveys have been speaking to have been authors with third-party publishers, as we now call it, rather than traditional publishing. So we wanted to do a survey on the one hand. On the other hand, surveys, they tell you something, but they can never tell you everything, and it can be difficult to get at some of the information. So it was our sense very much that author incomes were rising. Because we were seeing the community maturing, we were seeing authors becoming much better publishers, over the 10 years that we've been in existence. Back at the beginning, authors didn't even, they kind of fell into self-publishing because they couldn't get a deal. They didn't take their publishing seriously. They were kind of hoping to get a publisher. But over the years, we've watched essentially authorship go from being a career to being a business, and for authors realizing that they are in business, a creative business, and what that means and how that feels. And once they embrace that and accept that, then they tend to be very good publishers because nobody knows a reader like the author. And we've seen authors creating whole new genre over the years. We've seen, so many interesting and amazing things happening. Plus, we've seen some 6 and 7 and even 8-figure businesses emerging in the self-publishing sphere. And of course, then there's a large band of authors who are just getting going and aren't earning a lot. So we wondered, with all this talk of falling incomes, were we wrong when we thought incomes were rising? Was it, because we paid too much attention to those who were doing well? Do the vast majority of self-publishing authors maybe not earn, etc.? So there was only one way to find out. So that's why we did it.
What are some of the like the ways that you ensure that this is as accurate as it can be? Like, how are you vetting it?
That was really important to us. So the first thing to say is this is not our survey. We commissioned the survey, but we did not conduct it. We did give input into the questions, because that was one of the things we saw when we looked at other surveys. And when I would try to do one of those other surveys, I would often trip over it, because it was clear the survey did not understand how a self-publishing author makes money. And so it would very often be quite difficult to answer the questions, or the question that would actually tell them more about me and how I do things wasn't there. So we did have input into the questions, but we worked with two really great guys. I want to give them such a big shout out. Steve from SKS Consultancy and Fad from the Future of Publishing. And they went off, designed the survey, and we then just did a call out to you and other people in the community and asked them to help us distribute the survey. We were hoping to get 1,000 responses, because that would make it statistically valid, and we more than doubled that. So
Really?
We'd over 2,000 responses, which, as you know, getting busy in the office to stop and fill out a survey. We also we limited it for two reasons. We drew the box very tightly this time for two reasons. So we only spoke to those who were spending 50% or more of their time on their writing and publishing activities. And, sort of primary occupation self-publishers was the idea. And the reason we did that was because we were benchmarking the study that was most like ours and most applicable. And so we wanted to have a kind of a like for like scenario. So the ALCS, which is the Authors Lending and Collection Society, it's a global organization, though it's based here in the UK as well. They had done that. They had said primary occupation authors. So we wanted to see, self-publishing primary occupation authors. That was one reason. And we just asked, and again, because we were benchmarking them this time, we'll benchmark ourselves next time. They only asked for gross income. They didn't ask about net income. And so we did the same. We just asked for gross. We didn't look at net. Next time we will take in part-time authors, and we will look at net as well as gross. But we just wanted to do that like for like comparison, and keep it as much like that as possible. So
do you feel though that because you were focused on the full-time authors, do you feel that this is representative of the self-publishing industry as a whole, or is it really just sort of drilled down?
I think, half your time or more spending it. So, these are still authors with day jobs, some of them, but they weren't, anyone who did less. We had lots of part-timers coming forward and saying, I'm, really sorry that I can't be part of the survey. I would like to be part of it. And, we had some people who were talking about 5-figure incomes even on a few hours, so we are definitely interested. What we'll do next time, I think, is do both, draw that distinction between 50% and over, but include the part-timers as well. And we had so much work to do this time just to get it set up, to honestly working out the questions. We nearly killed each other. It took months. Because we wanted to do some of the diversity kind of aspects of it as well, and look at genre and look at all sorts of things. So getting the questions together took us such a long time. Next time we'll be much better placed to put work into different aspects of it. So we see this as being an ongoing thing, and this is very much the diving board, and it's really the progress across the next decade, I think, and mapping that change and seeing what's going on is what excites us here.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, because your results are only as good as your questions. If you're asking the wrong questions, you're going to get terrible results.
Absolutely. And the other thing we really wanted to do, we drew that box. The third reason that we drew it very tightly was we wanted to say this will only take you 5 minutes. We wanted the questions to be really quick to answer, really easy to answer, very clear, and that it wouldn't take a long time, because we've seen other surveys in the sphere, and you know, they're too long, frankly. You lose the will to live before you get to the end.
Yeah, and they always sort of trick you, because you pop in and it's like, oh, there's 5 questions on this page. That's doable. And then you get to it, it's like only 47 more pages to go. So
and we didn't want to do that. And I think we definitely succeeded there, because we had a very good percentage that, you know, finished it out. So we're happy about that, and we will always keep it short. Promise.
Good. Yeah, that's the only way you're getting me to take it, for sure. So let's talk about some of the numbers. And I've got some of this pulled up, so you're going to see me look up a lot. I'm really kind of interested in some of what you guys discovered. One of the things that popped out of this was so first I noticed that it says nearly 60% of the respondents said that their income had risen between in 2022 over 2021. 60%. That's a big number.
It's amazing. And, you know, we're really, really pleased with that, and very, very surprised, you know. So that is the most, to my mind, you know, there's been a lot of attention in the media. We sent it out just to the trade press, and we will look at mainstream media a little bit further down the line. But a lot of the attention there, and the author podcasts and stuff that picked up on it, was on the median figure, you know, that the fact that on average, self-publishing authors earned more than those who had a publisher. And we talk about that in a minute. But to us, actually, the most important thing is the one you've also put your finger on. It's the fact that it's rising. It almost doesn't matter where you start if you're on the way up. And we were really pleasantly surprised that across those 2 years, so we asked each author to compare their income this year to their income last year. And this is a good moment for me to actually say a huge thank you, because we talked about keeping the survey short, you know, and stuff, but people still had to go and dig out their income reports. And, you know, we know it took you time and trouble to do that. So to the 2,000 plus authors who actually did that for us, a huge big thank you, because it really does help us to talk about these things with some sort of basis.
Yeah. We have a quick question I think is probably good to interject here. But Maggie asks, where can you see the survey?
Yeah, so it's on our self-publishing advice website. So we have 2 websites. We have the joining member website, but we actually put it on the self-publishing advice website, which is open to everybody. And you can find it at selfpublishingadvice.org/income survey. I'm just checking that as I say it. Income survey 2023. That's it. And there you'll find the media links and everything, you know, so you can look at it in detail. We also have a short presentation on that we used for London Book Fair, for those of you who don't love graphs. And then for those of you who do love graphs, we've got about 20 pages of those you can dig into if you want to. And we'll be updating that page over the coming few months, because we're going to be adding lots more in. And
Good. I tried to I'm going to show it from here. I tried to get it right, and hopefully I spelled everything right very quickly. So selfpublishingadvice.org/income survey 2023. And I dropped that in the comments, so you should be able to just click on that. And if I got something wrong, there's people in there waiting. Yeah.
That's right. It's right. Thank you.
All right. And we'll try to post that again towards the end of the show. So we'll talk about some more specific numbers and things, but whenever things like this come out, the question that's always on my mind is, what is it for you as someone we're going to say is positioned as an expert on this? What was the most surprising thing to come out of the survey to you?
Yeah, I think you've already put your finger on it. It is that drastic rise. So again, not surprised that it has risen, but really that's quite a leap from one year to another, and for so many authors to to be there in that position, we were delighted about that. That was one of the things. It was no surprise that romance authors dominated in terms of the upper end of the earning spectrum, but we were very pleased with some of the other genre findings as well. And some of the genres that are considered very minor, like say literary fiction or poetry, and also, just genres that people don't think about. The spread was more across the field than we had expected, and we were very pleased about that.
Yeah.
So I think those would probably be the two things. One of the things we're doing right now is diving into those genre findings and looking at, what are the factors that help, really a deep dive. So we've hired now a different analyst, Create, here in Scotland. They're university academics, and they're going to do some focus groups and self-publishing focus groups to talk a bit more about the detail that you can't get in a survey, a bit more of the qualitative kind of stuff, and find out a little bit more about that genre stuff as well, and the factors that are going into making more money. I suppose the other thing that was a little bit surprising is you can see in the graph there's a rise, and then there comes a bit of a dip. And we're interested in exploring that. What's causing that, and that little bit of a fall, and then back up, and then it really takes off. And this is a bit of a pattern. So that's interesting to us. We don't really understand it, but we're going to look more in, because we kind of expected that when you learned how to do this, and given that it is gross income, not net, if it was net income, you'd say, okay, the investment means, they've just not getting the same return on investment, or they've upped their investment, so the income is dipping. But this is gross income. So why would you rise, then dip, and then go back up again? We have some theories, but we want to find out what might be causing
that. That's the report I'm waiting on. I want to know. That's the, I guess you'd call that the qualitative analysis. Like, you want to know, like, the whys and the what fors and everything that actually happened as a result of all this, or to cause all this, rather. So yes, you guys are going to publish that, I'm assuming.
Yes, we're going to publish that. We're working on it right now, and at self-publishing live in London in June. We will be, Mark Dawson and myself will be presenting. Mark's company, Self-Publishing Formula, is sponsoring the second part of this kind of deep dive stuff. And we'll be presenting it at that conference then.
I'm going to be there, so I want to be one of the first to see it. Yeah, finally. I'm finally going to get to hang out with you guys. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the numbers here, because there were some really interesting ones. The average income was one that caught my attention and that I found fascinating. It said the average income was over 82,000 per author, or on average. That seems remarkably high to me for average. You are aiming mostly at the full-time to half-time crowd, so I imagine that helped with that number, but it's still pretty remarkable.
It is absolutely remarkable. I think it's wonderful. So I think there are a few things to be said about this figure. It's again this indicator, like the rising, tide. It's an indicator that when you get going as an indie author, you can expect good things. There's a statistical sort of thing that happens here. So average is all the respondents that we got, and then kind of add up the numbers and then go into the middle at 50%, and that's what you get. But median is actually the figure that statistically then knocks out the outliers. So the people who are earning over $1 million, and then the very many people on the left-hand side who hadn't got going yet. So you might be putting 50% of your time into writing and publishing, but you might yet only be on your first book, for example,
Right.
or or you haven't got going yet. You don't know how to do your marketing part, or whatever it might be. Again, we'll have more of an idea what's going on at that end when we look at the qualitative stuff. So yeah, but on average, if you rule out the outliers, the people who are earning very little or the people who are earning an awful lot, yeah, on average, if you take those people back in, it's over $80,000 a year, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. We have this comment from SD, I think, is going to help with this, but she says that that's average. The median says 12,749, and that means there are some high figures, but there are quite a few on the low side. So definitely something to keep in mind. But according to,
I would like to say something about that, though, that I think is really important, because again, if we're comparing it with authors who have a third-party publisher, and they're earning in some cases half this amount or less. Not all, but not all the studies show that, but the worst study was less than half this amount. And we're talking there about the authors that have been chosen by another business because they seem like a good investment.
Yeah.
Whereas we're looking at anybody who wants to turn up and be. So there are definitely going to be people in our cohort who don't have the writing skills and don't have the publishing skills yet. So I think that's really important to note. So of course you're going to have loads of people, on the low side, and of course that's going to be dragging the median down. But one of the important figures is once you get going, what is the average and the median? So this is very much in self-publishing, and this is again the difference between the two cohorts, those who have third-party publishers and those who do not. In self-publishing, it's over to you. You develop the skills, and you have that opportunity. Until you do, you're not going to make any money. Your readers are not going to buy your books unless you're doing the business for them. So I think that's a really important thing. So I'm really glad to get the question raised just to make that point.
Yeah. Now, you guys discovered that about 25% of the people who responded to this released their first book in 2020. There were a couple of things happening in 2020 that may have actually aided in this, and people contributing more. But how much of a factor do you think, like the pandemic itself, was on the current numbers?
So it's impossible to say how, in terms of the respondents that specifically chose to answer this survey, but they are an indicative group in that there are over 2,000 of them. So we have absolutely no doubt, and I know you guys found the same, that the pandemic brought a lot of people into self-publishing. There's absolutely no, it felt at one point like every single person in the whole wide world was publishing a book. So it definitely did. So those years, that year and the year following, and this is why it's important to keep doing things, to keep doing it every 2 years, so that we see, those kind of funny years where different things happening in the marketplace might be having an effect that really we'll only see over time. But, we could have said, well, let's wait for another 2 years because they were strange years, but sure, who knows what's going to happen in the next 2 years. But it has to be a factor, I think. I think it has to be a factor because they are a representative sample, and therefore that's going to be represented in there.
Yeah. I'm fine. I'm sorry. And I have these notes. So, and I keep finding things. I'm like, oh, I want to ask that. I want to ask that. And then I get sidetracked. One of the things, and this definitely, I'm in this group. It was talking about the authors who are prolific. Basically the ones who have more than 10 books published. Actually, according to this, you had 20% had more than 30 titles. That is a remarkable number, and I would not have thought it.
It really is, and I wouldn't. That was another surprise. Actually, I should have remembered when you asked me about what was surprising. That is surprising, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to finding out what genre they're in. You know, is that genre dependent as well? Because
Right.
I think that sort of crossover will be interesting to see. But yeah,
I also want to see the correlation between that and the authors who are making more than 20,000 a year. I mean,
that's what I mean.
yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. It's whether that and I think, you know, I'm going to take a punt here. I don't know until we do that deep dive. But all the other research in the marketplace indicates that the more books you have, the more money you make. And I mean, it's not exactly rocket science, is it? It's going to make it more likely that you do well, unless your books aren't selling at all. Once you've learned how to sell, the more books you have, the better off you are. And I think our research is going to show that to be true.
Yeah. I really am anxious to see the results of that. So, now, were you saying that do you have a group independent that is actually looking at this same data, or it's just, I know you have you've engaged a couple of different,
Yeah, so we decided, oh, by the way, so some of the people are saying it's going to take me forever to get to 30 books. This is not saying you have to write 30 books in order to make some money. You don't. We just want to see
right.
what correlation is. Some of the respondents we know for sure were making a very good income with far, far fewer books than that, with single digit numbers, but we just want to see the correlation.
Yeah.
To answer your question there about the follow-up data, yes, we decided to work with somebody else on this aspect of it. So to get another and different and independent group to look at the qualitative stuff and do this deeper dive. And so that's part of what's coming up next. And we decided it will be interesting to work with the same. And Mark was instrumental in this, to work with the same group of academics who had done the ALCS survey, just so they could look at the self-publishing cohort in that survey and compare it to our people and see if there were any interesting sort of things emerging there. So that's one aspect of what's coming in June. But we're also going out to the wider self-publishing community and talking to, as I said, people like yourselves, Drafted Digital, Written Word Media, Alex and K-Lytics, anybody essentially who has any interesting data that they can stand over, which tells us more about what's going on in the self-publishing space, because it's so difficult. One of the reasons you asked about the history at the beginning, I mean, one of the big reasons for us doing this is that it is so difficult to get accurate data about self-publishing. Platforms don't release what's going on because, for competitive reasons, there's a complete lack of visibility, if you like, of indie authors. We're not in the bestseller lists because very often indie authors don't have ISBNs, or they're not showing up for various reasons. So really, and more authors also are not using platforms, or they're using the platforms to bring people. By platforms, I mean Amazon, Apple, Barnes & Noble, whoever. They're using the books they sell there to bring readers back to their own websites, where they then sell directly to them. And we're seeing also lots more crowdfunding of books and using Kickstarter to sell, or now we've got Book Talk, and people are going to be selling over there. And our own author websites are becoming more authors have transactional websites, and more authors want to sell directly to their readers, and more and more readers are now comfortable with buying books online and going directly to the authors. So at ALLi, it's been a campaign for years to say, to readers, buy directly from the author. Authors do so much better when you do that, So what we know now is that the only person who can tell you for sure what any particular author makes is the author themselves. So at the moment, the outside world only looks really at Amazon and maybe Apple and a few others, Kobo, you know, some of the big players. But for lots of authors, they just form a percentage of what they're earning. And so you cannot assume that if somebody's not featuring on Amazon, that they're not making a living, or indeed that they're not making a killing. They can be.
Yeah, exactly. I actually would be very curious to see the numbers on the number of authors who are now selling direct, what they're making. Like that should definitely be a part of the report. So we've got some questions here. We've already answered a couple of them. Let's see. Here's one. Will you also be doing income surveys based on wide versus KU and genres?
That was one of the questions in the survey. So that's answered for our cohort. I don't have those figures at my fingertips, but you'll definitely get them on the link, and you'll be able to get a view on that.
Yeah. And I think that is actually very useful information, especially for us at D2D. We want to encourage you to go wide. I think finding some numbers on that would be very helpful. Let's see. We already answered that one. How much of the $80,000 a year is spent on advertising? That would be an interesting thing to know. But I don't think we have that information.
No, we didn't do that. That's what I was saying at the beginning of the interview, is that this time we only looked at gross income. Next time we look at expenses and return on investment. That's going to be the focus of our next survey. But this time it was just gross, and we don't have an answer to that question.
Here's another. This one's from Moya on YouTube. How will it be possible to become aware of the qualitative survey outcomes when they're available? And they're apologizing that it's 5 a.m. in New Zealand. Don't apologize. Thank you for being here at 5 a.m.
Absolutely. Hero.
So how will they be able to get, will there be an announcement or something? And I'm sure links on that same
Yes,
site.
definitely. So if you keep an eye on that link that we've given you there already, everything will be there. But also would encourage you to sign up for our alerts on selfpublishingadvice.org. Just sign up for the newsletter, and we'll keep you posted as to what's going on every step of the way, really.
Now this one's from our mutual friend Robin Cutler.
Hey,
hello. So what about hybrid authors, those that are both indie and trad published? What % of authors are in that category?
Not a big percentage, actually. That was another slight surprise in the survey, that it was under 10%. Can't remember the figure off the top of my head, but it was around 7-8%. I'm almost sure, something around that level. So what we're kind of, hybrid author, I know, is a term that is used widely in self-publishing and outside of self-publishing, particularly in the traditional publishing arena, but we tend to think of it as indie authors, you know, who are then selectively licensing some of their rights to a third-party publisher. That's the mindset shift that we're kind of encouraging within the community. So rather than thinking I've either gone this way or gone that way, or I'm a hybrid that's somewhere in the middle, it's like a different way of thinking about your rights, which is that you are the rights holder. If you have a rights buyer who wants to license your book for some sales, we are encouraging authors to think very carefully about what rights they are licensing, and limiting their term and their territory very carefully, rather than exclusively going, you were talking about wide, exclusively going with one self-publishing platform, no, or exclusively going with one rights buyer, which we traditionally used to call a publisher, no. Don't go exclusively with anyone. Keep your wide options, both in terms of the rights that you license and the uploading your book to the various platforms.
I like that you have all these new terms I'm going to steal for traditional publishing, like rights buyer and third-party publishing. We're going to totally borrow those.
Well, you see, do you know what's at the heart of that? When you stop seeing the publisher as the central player, and you start seeing the author as the central player, and you realize that, you know, publishers are just another service. So if you start thinking in an author-centric sort of way, you know, this is a book that I publish myself. This is a book that I used a third-party publisher for. But, you know, and you've got all these options. And that's what they are at the end of the day, is they are rights buyers. They're buying, but they will give you a contract that will hoover up every right you have.
Yes.
And it's your job to limit that contract so that they only get the rights that they're actually going to exploit and work with.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that we're in an era now where the indie author is much more empowered than we ever have been before, to the point where, you know, the whole trad pub idea, if you're really smart about this and you're really studying this business, you realize just how optional that is, and really needs to be part of your, you know, making the actual decision whether you want to do that or not, because you've got so many different options now and so much bigger return sometimes, you know. So
Absolutely.
I'm glad that we're thinking about that. So Harry Hall on YouTube asks, when will the next survey be done?
So the next piece of this sort of research, the timetable there is that we are working on it at the moment, and we will be bringing out that research in June. And we're calling that the big indie author data drop. And that's when we gather in all this information from the rest of the community, which in itself is hugely informative, you know, so that's really going to deepen our knowledge. And then every 2 years, we will be repeating this exercise. So we ask in the survey for their current year's income and the previous year's income. So it will be a biannual event.
Let's see, I got not a question, but a comment that I definitely want to share from our own Alyssa. If you found this chat interesting or helpful, please hit the like button. We really appreciate that. That's the standard. If you're on YouTube, you have to tell people to like and subscribe and do all those things. All right. So now, what's one of the questions I have, and you're uniquely qualified to answer this, but, you know, from the indie author perspective themselves, what are ways that we can leverage and use this information? Like, how is this helpful to us as individual authors?
So the first thing I think is that empowerment thing that you touched on. I think, you know, the very fact that this proves what we've all suspected for a long time, I think should be taken by every author as encouragement. So I saw there in the comments a couple of people saying that they're finding it tough. They're in their first year, they haven't any income yet. That is 100% par for the course.
Yeah,
you know, and that is what this survey shows. That's one big thing to take away. This is not about overnight success for most people. Most people who are doing well in the survey have been writing for a long time and have a number of books under their belt, and they have improved their writing skills and, in a sense, kind of, you know, become worthy of earning that money. And that's something that you need to take away, that if you do the work of acquiring the writing skills and the publishing skills that you need, you can look forward to success, not just that creatively, which is what we were always offered before. You know, you were supposed to be happy that you got to do something you enjoyed doing, but you're supposed to be poor as a church mouse, you know. So the big takeaway is you can set up a business in this competitive creative field, and you can acquire the skills which allow you to make a living, or, as we said, make a killing if you're really lucky and you're in the right genre and you're doing the right things. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think, is to look closely at those factors which are leading to success. And in terms of takeaways, I think, as you said, Kevin, you know, when we get the qualitative stuff and other input from the rest of the community, I think it's going to be much easier for an individual author to go in then and look and say, okay, this is my situation. Where do I see myself here? And what do these figures mean for me? Because it's like so many things in self-publishing, in writing, in indie authorship. The lesson for me is going to be different to the lesson for you, is going to be different to the lesson for the person who just started writing last year. And, you know, the person who has one book is going to take away something completely different, depending on what genre you're in. Also, I'd like to, you know, one of the things we're exploring, and I think is important, is the whole diversity angle, age, gender, you know, and we know that, for example, third-party publishing has a diversity issue, and we want to see, does self-publishing, one thing that's instantly noticeable is that in the traditional research, generally speaking, there are more men. But in this self-publishing research, there are more women. What are the reasons for that? We're not quite sure, but you know, those kinds of things. So I would say in June, well, right now, go in there and have a look and see what's there and see where you find yourself. But in June in particular, go in and see, where do you see yourself reflected within these numbers, you know, and what do you feel it means for you? But the big takeaway is, you can thrive commercially as well as creatively as an author if you self-publish.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to pop up one last question here. It's actually two questions. JT, you cheater. Says, two questions. For us data hounds, will the crosstabs be available? And do you have a breakdown of how many books are published each year?
Yeah. Go into the link there and have a look, JT. You'll see both those questions are answered there in the actual charts. We have, you know, pretty little pie charts. And
you're asking authors to go read, Orna, and that just never ends well.
Sorry.
I will say, I was just glancing over the notes again and I saw this note about how about a quarter. This is nothing to do with how many books were published. I'm sorry, JT. But it says that about a quarter of the respondents said they're bringing in 0 to 1,000, but like a year. But 28% said they were generating more than 6 figures. 28%. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. Yeah. That is so crazy. But it is possible. That's the point. And so, all right. Well, this has been fantastic. This has probably been one of our most embraced shows, of course. So thank you for being a part of this, Orna. What, I guess, parting shots here, like, what do you want people to, what action do you think people should take immediately regarding ALLi and regarding this survey? What should authors be doing?
Thank you. Well, first action, you are all invited to join the Alliance of Independent Authors, because we are as strong as our member grouping, and the fact that we have, we're a nonprofit, and the fact that we have thousands of members allows us to do work like this, because it takes a lot of time and input and administration and so on to do stuff. So if it makes sense to you, we would love to have you as a member. And the other thing is, we will be circulating the survey, and I know it's almost 2 years away, and that sounds ages away, but please look out for it in future, because again, the more people who get involved. And thirdly, and I'm just focusing on data in this conversation, you know, we do a lot of other things, but just keeping it very narrow on the data stuff. If you know anything interesting, if you see any interesting surveys, if you've come across anything, I mean, just today I came across a snippet about self-publishing in Germany, which was really, really interesting, which I didn't know and was well documented. So if you know anything interesting that's happening in self-publishing that is documented, somebody has done some research, you've seen something reported. All the reporting now and all of our sector is becoming very fragmented. When we started, we were all over everything. And yeah, I'm sure you're the same, Kevin, at D2D. It's getting harder and harder. You know, information is, and this is a trend that is not just in our sector, it's everywhere and will only continue to become more so. becoming more and more fragmented. It's getting harder and harder for anybody to be on top of everything. So we really rely on the community, both our members, but also our the wider self-publishing community, to keep us up to date with what's going on. So if you come across any interesting snippets, if you could get them to us at info@allianceindependentauthors.org, and you know, with an eye to the big indie author data drop, which will be coming in June.
Thank you very much, Orna. And I put the URL up on the screen. And for those who are listening to this after the fact, it's AllianceIndependentAuthors.org. Go check that out. You'll find all kinds of great information and how to join and all that. I will say this sort of thing, by the way, Orna, is exactly why I joined ALLi and am a proud member. And I encourage all independent authors to join. So now we're gonna play a little something here in a second, Orna. So don't drop out, don't drop the call, but stick around to the end. And for everyone else, and by the way, thank you for being a part of the show. Everyone else, make sure, and we love having you. Make sure that you do the obligatory like, share, comment, and subscribe. That's how we keep the show relevant and gain new followers on YouTube and elsewhere. And that helps us out, and that means we get to help you out. So go like, share, comment, and subscribe. And hey, share it with somebody while you're there. That helps us out a lot. Make sure you bookmark d2dlive.com, because you'll get a countdown to the next episode of this show, whoever we're going to be talking to next. We do the show every Thursday live, and every Thursday we release a podcast of a previous episode. So make sure you're subscribing wherever fine podcasts are sold. And of course, you want to sign up for an account at draftdigital.com. You really want to do this right now. We are about to roll out a whole bunch of amazing things over the next coming months. New features, and since the acquisition of Smashwords, we've got some things that are starting to become available to Draft Digital authors for the first time. So go set up an account. It costs you nothing. It's all benefit for you. So go check that out. And as we sign off here, again, thank you to our guest, Orna Ross, and to ALLi for being an ally to independent authors. And here's a little spot from a really, this guy just sounds amazing. So check this out, and we'll see you all next time. Ebooks are great, but there's just something about having your words in print. Something you can hold in your hands, put on a shelf, sign for a reader. That's why we created D2D Print, a print-on-demand service that was built for you. We have free, beautiful templates to give your book a pro look, and we can even convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound cover for print. So many options for you and your books. And you can get started right now at draftdigital.com.